Well, thank you for joining the Prosperous Sellers podcast. I've got a special guest, Rich Goldstein. Rich, welcome.
Hey, how's it going, Steve?
Good to see you again. Why don't you start by telling the audience a little bit about what it is that you do for those that don't know you already, which is probably very few, but I think it'd be helpful.
Yeah, I've patent attorney, been a patent attorney for over 30 years, believe it or not. And I work with sellers to help them protect their products, protect their brands, and to stay out of IP trouble on Amazon.
I know you're well recognized in the industry. I know you're kind of infamous for your parties at conferences, like the MGM suite that you reserve every year at Prosper Show and stuff. So you also connect a lot of people in the industry. So a lot, you know an awful lot of people in this space, don't you?
Yeah, and I think I've always been a connector. And one thing I learned about connecting, how do you scale connecting? Like if one of the things that really you're passionate about is connecting people one to one, how do you make that scalable? You throw a party. And you throw a
Mhm.
party, and then you bring good people together, and they get to meet each other, and you could connect way more people than you could one to one. And I mean, I know a lot of people that are close friends that work together that met at one of my parties. So apparently it works.
It does. I've met a lot of people at your parties, and I'm not a partier. I'm an introvert. I do not like to get together with other people because it puts me in a state of awkwardness. But I
Mhm.
have pushed myself to say this is what you got to do, and you're going to meet some great people, and I always come away so thankful that I went. And your parties are over the top. They're amazing. You've got some pretty cool things like your sushi boat, and the food that you bring out. And I know you've got tequila tasting and other things. So if
Yeah,
anyone has not been to one
Morimoto,
of Rich's party, you should do it.
sushi from Morimoto, top shelf tequila tasting. Yeah, a lot of cool things happening there. And
Mhm.
yeah, so in terms of like being an introvert, like I'd say it's the important thing then is if you're gonna push yourself to do some connecting, you
Mhm.
might as well make sure it's in an environment where you have good people, right?
It's
So
true.
that's what makes it worthwhile. So I like
Mhm.
cultivating that. I like cultivating an environment with good people, and
Yeah.
and it serves the introverts and the extroverts well.
It does. And, I find that this industry is pretty friendly. So even, other agencies and so forth, we all know each other, and we all, support each other and so forth. I feel like sellers learn a lot of what they go to the conferences, but they probably learn more just from talking to other sellers than they do actually at the speaking sessions.
Yeah, well, I think that like in general, when people start out selling and when they start thinking in terms of I'm going to be a seller, they're usually expecting that it's going to be them and their laptop, that it's just going to be them kind of working the system, kind of without interacting with a lot of people. So I think it tends to, first of all, it tends to be attractive to those people that kind of want that. They want like more of a like, let me get technical on something, and I don't have to
Mhm.
work with too many people. And so a lot of sellers start out thinking that like the way I master this game is behind my laptop. But what many of them find out is really the way you master it is by being social, is by getting to know other sellers and finding out what worked for them or what didn't work for them and
Yeah.
learning from it. And
Mhm.
so it's kind of a little bit unexpected that Amazon selling turns out to be a bit of a social game.
It does. And I think the important thing to remember is that just because something worked for someone or didn't work for someone may not be the same results you get, but you're educating yourself and you're learning and you're saying, okay, now I know what these people have said have worked for them. Let me try it out and see if it works for me. Or maybe I did something wrong when I tried it out before because it's successful for them. It kind of sharpens you, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. And I guess just my only point is that like it's Amazon selling is not best done alone. It's best done with resources and other people that
Mhm.
that can help you, especially when you find yourself in a corner. So
Yeah. And even service providers or what a tools suites of things that are going to help you as a seller, AI tools. Like there's a lot of things that as an Amazon seller you're leveraging that you might think is the best right now, and you don't realize that last week this other tool was launched that's even better. And that open dialogue of conversation helps make sure that you're in your A game, because I find that the AI tools keep bouncing over one another. They're leapfrogging in their how they're able to do things like image creation and stuff like that. And all of the tools do the same thing. So whether it's a PPC tool, whether it's a tool that's going to help you with keyword research or what have you, always you know, learn what's working for other people, learn what's the newest and greatest thing, and don't be stagnant on that. And if you're not going to these conferences, you're not talking with others, you may just not be in the know.
yeah, absolutely,
So
absolutely.
tell me what are some of the biggest things that people come to you for support? I know broadly, anything with patents and IP, right? But what are some of the more common like problems that they come to you with?
Yeah, I mean, often people come to me looking to protect the product, and but very
Proactive.
often they don't come to me soon enough,
Okay.
right? So in general, like they're looking to protect the product, it's with a patent. But one of the things that 99% of sellers don't know is that once it's public, um, within a year, it will be too late to ever patent it. So
Wow.
yeah, and so often what happens is they've got a product that's been doing well, and they say, "We've just gotta protect this." And I ask them,
Hmm.
"Well, it's a product, you've been selling it, afraid to ask, but how long you been selling it?" And they'll tell me, 18 months, and things are going great, like, "We're ready, let's do this." I'm like, "I can't help you, it's too late." So,
Wow.
in the US, if a year has gone by since you publicly disclosed the product, then it's too late. It's
Hmm.
totally game over. And
So
in actually a lot of the world, including Europe and China and a lot of other jurisdictions, if you've launched it at all before you apply for a patent, it's too late already.
it's almost like the opposite of a trademark where you had first use. So you basically, can defend it even if you didn't necessarily have a formal trademark upon it, right?
Yeah.
This is the
Well, I
opposite.
mean, in general, you need to be using it to complete the trademark registration process. I think that's what you mean, is that it's
Yeah.
kind of opposite in that
Yeah.
if you've been using it, that could stop you from getting a patent. Whereas for trademarks, to actually get it registered, to complete the process, you need to be
Have to
using
have it in use.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. So it basically after a year, it's open game. Anybody can use that exact
Yeah,
functionality.
exactly.
Wow.
It's in the public domain, so
Yeah.
anybody can make, use, or sell it, and if you're able to get a patent, you could stop people from making, using, or selling it, which is why it pays to patent things.
How how I guess like what kind of patents hard to are something that you can kind of get behind versus those that say there's not enough differentiation. Like,
Yeah,
and how minute can it be to qualify or not qualify, for example?
right, well, here's the thing, it goes beyond just qualifying and not qualifying. It's like, what is the scope of the patent going to be? So is it going to be a patent that covers an overall concept um, for a product, or is it going to be a patent that's about the details and just it requires that you have these 10 different details present before you can infringe it. So something very narrow. And the difference between those two situations is what existed before. Because if you've invented a whole new genre, then you can patent that whole new genre that you've invented. But
Mhm.
if there were things that already existed, and then the patent gets narrowed down to, well, what actually makes it distinct? And that could be pretty deep in the details. So it could be pretty narrow in scope. So the point is, the way you figure out if you're headed towards patenting something that's going to be worthwhile, worth patenting, is you need to find out how innovative it really is. You need to find out what are the closest things to it that have been invented, because that's going to dictate what you can carve out as being your territory with this patent, whether it's going to
Yeah.
cover a chunk of the market or whether it's just going to be a tiny little sliver that doesn't really matter.
Like, I guess just for example, I've got this Yeti mug, um, and there's a lot of competitors that sell something very similar. The shape's a little different and so forth, but maybe if it's a twist on lid, that's significant enough to say, I'm going to patent that piece, and others can't. Yeah, obviously people have that already, but others, can't use that functionality without, somehow getting my permission, or they can't use it because I have a patent on it, right?
Exactly. And so like and that's the thing. So imagining the twist on lid was new, right? So then you're able to, or Yeti is able to patent that twist on lid that other people can't use. Then the important question is like, well, is the public going to demand the twist on lid? Like, do they need, when you are trying to make a product that competes with this Yeti mug, do you need to have a twist on lid, or is
Mhm.
there alternatives? Because if there are good alternatives that are just the same to customers, then twist on lid doesn't matter very much, right? So it's like the name of the game is to patent those features that become compelling to
Yeah.
customers.
Something that really is a differentiator that now gives you a strategic
Yeah.
benefit versus all your competitors, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That having the thing that makes it patentable also be the thing that makes it marketable. That's really
Mhm.
what we look for. That's the sweet spot.
Yeah. H- Tell us more about that process. Like, okay, got an idea.
Mhm.
This is what I think is patentable. I think there's marketable value to it. Where do we go from here? What are the steps involved? What are the things that you guys are going to look at to quantify and qualify it? And um and then what can the sellers do with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think really what it is we wanna get to know, the product that you have in mind and a bit about your business so we can see where that synergy may be.
Mm,
So, typically, like, um, we call it a patent evaluation where it's gathering information, initial meeting to kind of go over like what you have, what your plans are with it, kind of how the market works in your niche, and so we can get an understanding of that and then do the research to see what else exists that's close to it, get copies of those patents, then and then have follow-up discussion about what we found, what that leaves open in terms of a possible patent, and then strategy. Like, what's the best way to go about protecting this, and is it going to help you move the needle on your business?
mhm,
So, yeah, that's called a patent evaluation. That's usually how we do it, and the idea, in terms of what they get is hopefully a sense of how a potential patent project fits within their business plans, within what they're doing, as opposed to
mhm,
being an abstract concept. People are like,
mhm.
well, I guess I should patent that. But yeah, well, why? Let's take a look at well, why you would be, and where's the ROI going to come from?
Yeah, good point. What would be the timeline to get a patent put in place, and how different is that if you were to look outside of just the US?
To actually have a patent granted takes a couple of years. I think that's kind of um, similar around the world, in all the different jurisdictions where you can get patents. Um,
Separate processes, so every country you have to apply for a patent, or is there some such a thing as a global patent?
there is no such thing as a global patent, but there's a mechanism I'll explain in a moment. But yeah, in general, it takes a couple of years to get a patent, and then it takes maybe a few months to get everything together and filed, and that's what brings you to patent pending. Okay.
Got
So
it.
once you file the application, it's patent pending, and then it's just going to be waiting to be reviewed. Now, in terms of like international, so there is no such thing as a global patent. Ultimately, if you want patent protection, you need to apply in the countries where you want protection, which can get to be very expensive.
Hmm.
And so, first of all, most people don't do that. And then, second of all, there is a mechanism that you could use to kind of buy you some time. So essentially, it's like if you need to file your first patent application hopefully before launch, right? That's at a time where you're probably trying to get some traction with this product and you don't know if it's going to be successful or not.
Hmm.
You have to take a leap of faith and do the work to at least get the patent application filed. But then it doesn't necessarily make sense to also file in all those other countries too, um, because you're still looking to gain traction. So one of the things that can be done is, let's say you file in the US. Within a year of that, you could file something called a PCT application, stands for Patent Cooperation Treaty. And what that will do is buy you up to about 30 months from your initial filing to file in the individual countries where you want protection. So rather than having to go and file in Europe and Japan and China, whatever, you can instead file a PCT application and have up to 2.5 years to decide, hey, things are going well, let's file in those countries, or things are so, probably not worth filing in those other countries.
Got it. Okay, that's good to know. Because that's always the challenge early on is, okay, I'm already investing a lot in inventory and content and everything else. Now I've got to pay for a patent and trademark and everything else, and it may not be successful. So that gives you the time to kind of prove it out and make sure it is successful before you continue those investments, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, that's great.
Exactly.
What about AI and patents? Are you finding that AI is being used to identify patents more, and is that creating a backlog in the patent system or in your workload? Because there's just kind of more people that are, you know, basically not inventing these things themselves, but using AI to invent them for them.
Yeah, I haven't seen any impact like that.
Okay.
There's definitely a lot of promise in AI for streamlining some of the kind of 200-year-old procedures in the patent world. So like a lot of it is very manual and non-automated. But I think a good part of that is because a lot of it requires some real judgment, like, and it's not necessarily, whenever I see like people ask ChatGPT questions about patents and they show me the answers, I'm like, yeah, they missed something big. Like they went on a certain assumption
Yeah.
that, like I feel a lot of what we do in patent law and what we even say in patent applications, it's as much about what we don't say as it is about what we say. So, like,
Mm,
reading between the lines isn't a thing that AI does very well. So I think a lot of it is going to be human dependent, but I haven't really seen a big impact of
okay.
AI on practice. I mean, it's like we have people that have inventions related to new AI process or a process that involves uh,
Sure.
kind of a unique way of using, let's say, a large language model or of training such a model. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, it hasn't really, other than being like another technology area in which patents are being filed, it doesn't seem to be affecting much.
Okay. The are you focused on all patents, or are there certain categories of patents that you tend to focus on?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd say, I mean, my background's in electrical engineering, but throughout my career, most of my patents have been either consumer products or software. So that's probably
Okay.
the two biggest categories of what I usually work on. It's like usually not anything too high tech, uh,
Mhm.
consumer product side, but on the but then also software, which can be rather technical. So those
Yeah.
are the main things we do. Like my colleague Julian here, is his background's biochem, so like he works on a lot of formulations um, and medical type products and things of that nature. Uh,
Hmm.
Pretty much the only thing we don't do here is genetic patents. So if you like breed, come up with a new super breed of mice, like that's not our
Yeah.
wax.
Didn't even know there was such a thing. So,
Yeah.
but good to know you don't do that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, what do you have you seen AI being used to take over someone's patent that has gone stagnant, or to identify those, I should say?
Yeah, not specifically, but there is a good strategy though, um, in finding expired patents. Um, and the idea is that essentially when a patent's expired, it's fair game. If anyone wants
Mhm.
to make exactly what was described in that patent, you're welcome to do so. So, it's funny, Kevin King actually had me, um, do a session, uh, teaching how to do that at one of his billion-dollar seller
I
summits.
was there. Yeah.
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 So, oh, cool. Yeah.
That was pretty neat. Yeah.
And,
Um,
yeah.
no, go ahead.
And so, yeah, I mean, there's definitely a strategy there. I don't know if you
Mm.
need AI. I don't know of any specific AI tools that would help with that. But there are some decent ideas that have been patented that just never made it to market. No one put the right marketing behind it. Um, but in order to find those, you need to weed through a lot of mediocre at best ideas. So,
Is I'm a little green when it comes to patents, to be honest. So is patents does it have multiple steps similar to the trademarks where if you fail to do one of these steps, it basically doesn't ever get approved? So
mhm.
there's a lot of things that were submitted perhaps that just went stagnant because they never followed through.
There are, but by and large, you won't find those.
Okay.
Like most patent applications, well, first of all, up until when did they start? In the 1996, they started publishing certain patent applications. Usually, people that are going for foreign patents will have their application published, but the greater majority of applications are not published and have not been published throughout the previous history. Um, Unless the patent is granted. So, usually you can't find those for the older products, and over there's a certain number of the ones which you'll find an abandoned patent application, that was published, maybe, let's say, from 10 years ago, but you can't safely use those, if it was, uh because it's possible there could be another patent um, that um, that was granted, and just the one that
Mhm.
you're looking at, the one that you have in front of you, was not pursued. So I don't trust patent application publications in that same way. Um, but but yeah, in general, just so forget the ones that were just left behind by someone not pursuing the
Mhm.
patenting of it. There are millions that were not, ever marketed, and were actually patented.
Hmm.
So you can safely know that once that patent expired, it's fair game for you to use it if you think it's a good idea.
But you can't you can't create your own patent on that
No.
past idea because it now becomes open game, just like if they used it for more than 18 months, right? Or more than a year, right?
Yeah, exactly. Anything that's
Okay.
out there in public, you can't
Oh,
patent over because it's
okay.
not new. So it's kind of like the light bulb patent expired,
Mhm. Yeah.
um, more than 130 years ago, and but
Mhm.
once that expired, it's fair game for anyone to make a light bulb, but no one could patent the light bulb over again. If they improve on it, they might be able to patent the improvements, but not the idea that's been out there and expired.
Got it. Got it. So trademarks is probably what you spend an awful lot of time on as well. And trademarks are necessary for every single seller,
Yes.
whether you're, I mean, assuming you've got a brand name. What? are the key considerations to someone conceptualizing a brand to make sure they do it all right from the beginning?
In terms of trademarks, yeah. So I would say you want to apply for a trademark at as early a stage as you feel you have something that's valuable to you. So it could be that you know, you come up with a name for a product and you're developing the product, but you know that the name could change. It's not like you're particularly stuck on that name. I wouldn't apply for a trademark at that point. But when you have a name and it's kind of at the you recognize that you are likely to launch the product, or you can just have a sense that like you don't even want to tell anyone the name you came up with because you think it's so good, then you probably should be applying for a trademark. Um,
Mhm.
the cost of the trademark in comparison to the value of the brand, or another way of saying the amount of money that people will typically put into launching the brand and building the brand, it's minuscule, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, like in a typical, well, I guess there is no typical brand, but very often you'll be spending 10 to 100 times what you'd spend on the trademark in launching the product or in promoting it or on PPC once the product is moving. So, like, it's just I'm often astounded by people that don't want to invest a couple K into trademarking their brand name. It
Mhm.
defies logic for me. I mean, literally every week I talk to someone that's like, well, yeah, you know, maybe I'll get to it. I got some other priorities right now. Are you kidding me? Like, this is
It's
your brand. You're investing so much into this brand, and the trademark protects the integrity of your brand. It
yeah.
protects the investments of time and money you're putting into it. And like, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But yeah,
Mhm.
I would say like we had just talked about patents. Patents are debatable whether you should be doing them, but trademarks are a no-brainer. You
I agree.
absolutely need to do the trademarks at an earliest stage as you can.
I mean, not only does it protect you, right? But it also gives you access to other benefits on Amazon and other marketplaces like Walmart,
Yep.
where you can have enhanced content and a brand store and other things like that, new or different advertising methods that are exclusive to brands. So it's a no brainer if anyone's listening on this and is having that same mindset, like I don't want to invest in it. Two things I would say, or a couple things I would say, is one, if you're shying away from a couple grand towards a trademark, you probably haven't allocated enough funds to fuel your business. You're probably going to not have enough inventory, not invest enough in content, not invest enough in advertising. You haven't budgeted thoroughly enough to say, what does this need? What is this business model going to require as far as an investment? And if you haven't done that, like, wireframe that all out. Like, what are all the different costs that I need to put into this business, and do I have what it's going to take to fuel it? And then don't just launch a Me Too product. Like, launch something that you're excited to be different with, and your brand name is one of the aspects where you can be different. And being a Me Too seller on Amazon to me is a thing of the past. It is. Can you still do okay with it on generic products? Yes, but it's a pricing game. You're not going to win against the Chinese sellers. Your brand name maybe the key decision for a retailer or a consumer to say, I actually trust that brand. I like the name. I think it gives me a sense of confidence versus a Chinese seller that's launching with a brand name that doesn't look like it makes any sense to the American consumer. Those are advantages that you need to be thinking of. So,
Yeah,
um,
and at the very least, it's for return customers, right?
yeah.
Customers who
Mhm.
bought from you before, they recognize your brand name, they buy from you again, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you don't have something there that's recognizable, then they might come back and they would totally buy from you again, except they don't see you. You're invisible to them because there's nothing to distinguish you from the next listing with a similar product and maybe a slightly lower price.
That's exactly right. And one thing that I found is that there's um, a lot of products that don't have a brand that you can trust. They're like one hit wonders that are, a factory just developed. Do you want to buy from one of those sellers, or do you want to buy from a brand that has an array of products geared towards your product that you say this brand's going to be around a while, and if I have problems in the future, I've got someone to contact. If I want to buy more of it, how can I contact them? Like, for example, we have a Cybertruck, and we've added a bunch of different accessories to it and so forth. There are some brands that really honed in on aftermarket accessories for Cybertrucks, and they understand the product. They understand like what the consumer is going to use of that product, I have a much better sense of trust buying from them than some aftermarket, Chinese factory that's selling a product that's only that one product geared towards the Cybertruck. They just don't know the product as well. They don't know the customer as well. Are they going to execute as flawlessly? I'm not sure they will. So, for example, I made an order yesterday for just a small accessory, and that the brand name was part of my purchasing criteria. Is this a brand I'm going to trust?
Yeah.
So it's a psychological benefit to have that. And like you said, if they love it, now they're going to be able to hopefully remember it and come back and buy from you again and again. If especially if it's a repeatable purchase type product.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So it's just really important to protect the
Mhm.
brand. Other thing to know too is like sometimes people procrastinate filing the trademark application. It only gets more complicated as time goes on. Um, it's like if someone happened to file a trademark application with a similar name a day before you, then it makes what could be a couple $1,000 registration into a $50,000 project because now we have to oppose their trademark before we can get yours granted. So it's
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, um, and I'll just
There
mention another thing, like for sellers that have gone down this road before, is one thing you wanna make sure is that the trademarks that you have is current with respect to the products that you're selling now. I mean, a lot of times I'll talk to a seller and they'll say, "Oh, yeah, we've got the registered trademarks for this brand." And they're selling like in these 4 different categories. And I'll say, "Well, you have the trademark for one. I see 5 years ago you got that. That's great. But the other categories, you don't have protection." So, like,
mm,
getting trademarks in the categories of goods and services that you're providing under that brand is important, and that's
yeah.
very often a blind spot that sellers have, is having to keep up with them as they expand their business.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you find that the trademark adds much in the way of value when a brand's trying to or a seller or a company is trying to sell their business? Does that have some weight where, if it's a good name that people are willing to pay more for it if it's trademark?
Absolutely. I mean, I'd say, that any IP you get will give you an ROI when you exit.
Yeah.
Even even IP and brands that aren't that important to the business, it will help show that you've dotted the I's and crossed the T's and will increase the multiple at least a bit.
Yeah.
But remember that multiple that you're getting is being multiplied by the profit, which would usually be a minimum in the, mid, um, mid 6 figures and probably into 7 figures. So spending, let's say you spend 10,000 on a bunch of trademarks, and you're going to exit for 3,000,000 without them. Like, worst case scenario, you're getting 3.5 now. So 3.5, an extra 500,000 for having invested like 10K. That's a
Yeah.
50 time ROI. It's
Mhm.
nearly impossible to not get an ROI on an investment into trademarks when you exit. And you're not
Yeah.
necessarily gonna exit, not everyone exits, but if you
Mhm.
do, you will get a lot more by having tackled this.
Yeah. No, I think it's like you said, it's kind of table stakes for sellers selling on
Yeah.
marketplaces or e-commerce, or in retail. I mean, you've got to have a brand, and you might as well have it done right. Do you? I was asked. once, or I guess I gave my input once about why do some brands on Amazon have these crazy names? And my hypothesis
Mhm.
was, oh, they're probably Chinese, like the names that make sense in another language, like China. But when they convert it to US, it doesn't make any sense. And someone said, I think it's actually that it's just whatever they can easily get trademarks because they're doing it in mass, application. What's your take on that?
Yeah, no, that last part, that's really accurate. It's like, the more distinctive a trademark, the stronger the protection and the
Mhm.
easier it is to get. So it's kind of like, if if you're selling red licorice and you're trying to brand it as red licorice, that's my trademark, that's not gonna fly
Yeah.
because it's descriptive. It's not very distinctive. But if
Mhm.
you call it like, uh I don't know, ocean breeze, red licorice, then um, it's what's called arbitrary, meaning ocean breeze doesn't mean anything with regard to licorice. So that's the basis of a powerful brand, kind of like
Mhm.
Apple computers. Before Apple associated with computers, there was no association between those two,
Yeah.
and that was the basis for a very powerful brand. And
Mhm.
so, um, and when it's a very powerful brand, when it's very distinctive, it gets through the trademark office more easily. So, um, so if you're selling like USB adapters and you're calling them Hugabufoo, trademark office is going to say well, that's going to be confusing to people because, like, it's going to avoid a lot of trademark issues by
Mhm.
having such an unusual name.
Yeah, yeah, I got you. I figured that that made a lot of sense when I heard it, and I just hadn't contemplated that early on. So something to keep in mind. We face that with Prime Guidance. It's something that is not as precise of a brand, so it required more thorough kind of vetting when we went through the trademark process and so forth. I think there was like we had to wait 5 years before applying for a full
Okay.
trademark.
Yeah, so what
Um,
that is that they probably rejected it as merely descriptive, which means like, okay, if you're giving guidance to people about Amazon Prime, then that's kind of describing what it is. That was probably the rejection. And so what you did is you had it moved to the supplemental register, which is kind of like, you can sometimes trademark terms that they're calling descriptive, and then 5 years go by and you can show like maybe it is on its face, but within this industry, people know Prime Guidance is a consulting organization. It's
mhm,
a specific consulting organization. It's not just a descriptive term.
mhm.
Then you get the full trademark on what's called the principal register. So you're on the supplemental
That's
register is what that means.
Yep, I think you're exactly right on that. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, that's why, I think a seller that's trying to develop a brand should seek out expertise
Yeah.
from someone like yourself because, I imagine you probably run into people that try and do it themselves and mess it up. They
Oh
do
yeah.
something wrong, or maybe they're just in the contemplation standpoint where they've got 6 different brands they may go forward with, and by having a single conversation with you, you might rule out 3 of them that just really won't fly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's like a lot of times we get those situations where they tried it themselves and they've been rejected, and sometimes we could fix it, sometimes we can't.
Mhm.
Sometimes we have to just start all over again, and this is usually a year after they applied, so it's really starting back at ground zero for for the trademark process if they have to restart. Yeah, I mean, it's like when people file it themselves, like, a good amount of the time they'll get it right. But if they don't, and then they have to restart, and sometimes they have to rebrand and
Mhm.
destroy their inventory, like that could be extremely expensive. And it's
Yeah.
like I understand that it's important when you're starting a business to be careful about where you put your resources, and it might be attractive to save a few $100s by going to LegalZoom or something like that. But um, one of the big things is like even if it's filed correctly, it might be for the wrong thing. Which it's like sometimes that strategy of figuring out like, well, how are we going to tackle this? How are we going to get this trademark? What's the path going to be for it? Maybe because of some of the things that we found, we want to stay out of this category and focus over here. So it's like that type of guidance that can be priceless because
Totally.
after time goes by, you can't redo it. So
Hmm.
it's good to,
Speaking of redoing, is the process like, let's say you have a brand and you've established a trademark in two categories and you want to add a third category. Is that almost the same effort as starting all over, or are you like jumping ahead in the process and now you're just applying for category expansion?
yeah, no, it's a new application. I wouldn't
Okay.
say it's as much effort. That might not need to do a search. But
Mm.
yeah, it's a new application. There is no addendum. It's kind of like I'm sure Harley Davidson has a trademark in the category of motorcycles for Harley Davidson going back, maybe close to 150 years, 120 years. But maybe last year they decided to start selling toothbrushes that are branded Harley Davidson. So now they file a new application.
Got
And
it.
I have some colleagues that do work for Coca-Cola, and you're wondering, well, what do they possibly have to do? Coca-Cola's brand is established. They're always filing new applications for different things that they're doing.
Yeah.
So, um, so yeah, it's just if you expand into new categories, then we file another application.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I know we've got some really big brand names that have a dozen different brand or trademarks in different categories that they've just as their brand had gained steam that they've expanded into new categories and had to have had to take that approach. So I'm
Yeah.
just curious on the time frame. What about copywriting challenges? So one thing that's kind of common is for people to steal their imagery, for example, and use it for their product. How do you defend on that? Do you need a copyright on each of your images, or how do you say, wait a minute, that was my image and you took it and used it for your own use, and defend against it?
Yeah, well, in general, a couple of things about copyright. It's technically protected when you create the work. It's protected against someone copying it, but having a registered copyright can make a big difference. There are some enforcement scenarios where you absolutely need to have the registration in place. So it's useful to protect them. It's pretty inexpensive too. It's something that you can do yourself. File copyrights. Once you've done a couple, it's pretty simple to do them. Um, and The big problem with copyrights, though, and enforcing copyrights, is that someone's copying your images. You contact Amazon, make an IP complaint, and say, "Hey, they're copying my images." Um, they will take down the listing, but then the person who was ripping off your images, all they need to do is send what's called a DMCA counter notice, and within 10 days, the listing will go back up. And then now you, as the owner of those images, are in the position where you're not able to shut them down unless you file a lawsuit. You have to file an actual lawsuit then to enforce the copyright infringement. So it's really not a great situation. Copyrights aren't the most powerful things to enforce on Amazon against copyrights for that main reason is that someone could just send the counter notice and undo it. But if it's a design patent, there is no such counter notice. You take them down with the design patent and they're down. And same thing with trademarks. There is no such counter notice like that. So that's, I think, the main limitation with copyright.
So if someone's using a brand name that's not authentic, they're pretending to be a different brand.
Mhm.
That is defensible as a trademark infringement, and that what you mentioned is not applicable to that. But if they were to use your images,
Right.
then they can file that notice and
Counter
kind of
notice.
get away with it.
Yep,
That's
exactly.
yeah, that's crazy.
Yep.
What about AI generated images? Is that your copyright or is that the AI's tools copyright? If you gave the
Well,
instructions.
technically, it's not copyright protectable.
Okay.
It requires human authorship, but that's an area that's going to be evolving in the near future about about the protection of things that were, let's say, partially generated by AI. But in
Mhm.
general, the rule is it requires human authorship. So something that's strictly generated by AI is not protectable.
I've heard people say that if you take an AI generated image and you add a human element, like some sort of edit that you're modifying the image in some way, that it could be defensible. Is your take that that is potentially defensible in that case? Or is a court generally going to rule that it's an AI generated image and you just added this one element and it doesn't qualify?
Yeah, well, it's if partially by AI. I mean, it's kind of like if like say AI generates something and then you kind of edit it to your taste, then conceivably you're the author of it.
Okay.
But yeah, this is all stuff that's rapidly developing. So
Yeah.
who knows at this point?
Yeah. Yeah. Good good things to know as things change. At least having some human element of editing would be wise um, at this point, but it'll evolve, and I'm sure the courts will add more clarity over time. um, do you what about model usage and so forth? Is there um, do you have any sense of, like, if you hired a model and you used their image and then your term expired, could you just simply, like, cut off their head of the image and then still use it? Or is the whole image kind of, you
It's gonna
know
depend on the contract you have with them
okay.
about rights. That's gonna be the biggest factor. There's something called right of publicity of, when you have a celebrity that they have a right to control the use of their likeness.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, there are probably other issues, but I think the contract is going to be the biggest factor.
okay. Yeah. Good to know. I've seen some contracts that were very thorough and some that were too ambiguous, and it's best if you're going to hire a model to make it really clear,
Mhm.
cut and dry. There's no confusion, including what channels it can be used on and who can you provide it to and so forth. Um, so this has been outstanding, Rich. Thanks so much for your time. Why don't you tell the audience how they can reach you, um, should they want to reach out?
Yeah, I mean, if you wanna learn more about patents and trademarks, you can check out my website, goldsteinpatentlaw.com. There are great resources there for learning about the process. I also wrote the book for the American Bar Association that explains to entrepreneurs how patents work. It's called the ABA Consumer Guide to Obtaining a Patent, and you can find that on Amazon. And yeah, if you want to find out if it's a match to work together with us, then come to our website and set up a meeting, and we'll talk about what you're looking to do, and see if we could help.
Awesome. Sounds great. Thanks so much, Rich, and great having you. Great seeing you again.
Absolutely. Likewise, Steve.
Talk to you later. Bye bye.